There's a world famous bike right there.
From the bizarre one-wheeled monowheel to the risky front-seat four-car, these features capture the imagination, but often at a steep price. What could be riskier than riding with an open chain drive or kickstarting with sheer force? Join us as we explore 13 dangerous old motorcycle features nobody wants back. The monowheel was a unique and intriguing vehicle that emerged in the late 19th century. Unlike traditional motorcycles, it had a single large wheel surrounding the rider. This design first appeared in the 1860s and gained some attention as an innovative mode of transportation. Riders sat within the wheel's circumference, creating a striking visual effect and introducing significant safety concerns. One of the main dangers of the monowheel was its stability. While in motion, the vehicle depended heavily on the rider's balance and forward momentum to stay upright. This made it extremely difficult to control, particularly at lower speeds or when coming to a stop. The lack of horizontal stability meant that sudden movement or uneven surfaces could easily cause the vehicle to tip over. The rider's position inside the wheel further complicated matters, as it limited visibility and made it harder to spot obstacles ahead, increasing the likelihood of accidents. The monowheel's design also posed risks during sudden stops. If the rider applied the brakes too hard, the entire wheel could flip forward, leading to potentially serious injuries. This issue and the challenges of maintaining balance made the monowheel highly impractical and dangerous for everyday use. By the mid-20th century, the monowheel had largely fallen out of favor, replaced by more stable and safer two-wheeled motorcycles. Having explored the challenges of the monowheel, what innovations in early motorcycle design aim to address similar issues? Let's dive into the four-car to find out. The four-car was a unique type of motorcycle that appeared in the early 20th century. It had a distinctive design, with a passenger seat in front of the driver and the engine. First introduced in the 1900s, the four-car was considered an innovative way to carry passengers or goods. Manufacturers like Harley-Davidson and Indian produced these vehicles to provide a practical solution to local deliveries and personal transportation. Despite its initial appeal, the four-car's design had significant safety risks. With the passenger seated at the front, they became highly vulnerable in the event of a collision, absorbing the impact first and facing a high risk of serious injury. The vehicle's weight distribution further complicated its safety. Placing the passenger and cargo at the front disrupted the four-car's balance, making it difficult to control, particularly at higher speeds or uneven surfaces. The steering mechanism also added to the vehicle's dangers. The front axle, supporting the passenger seat, was connected to the handlebars through several linkages. This setup made the steering less responsive and more prone to mechanical failures. Riders often found it challenging to maneuver the four-car safely, especially in tight spaces or during sudden turns. Due to these safety issues, the four-car gradually disappeared by the mid-1910s. Manufacturers began focusing on more stable and safer motorcycle designs, such as the sidecar, which placed the passenger beside the driver instead of in front. This shift led to the eventual decline of the four-car as a viable transportation option. In the 1960s, highly high handlebars, often called ape hangers, gained popularity. These handlebars were mounted much higher than standard ones, sometimes rising above the rider's shoulders. The design was initially introduced to give motorcycles a distinctive look and match the chopper culture's rebellious spirit. Riders believed these high handlebars offered a more relaxed riding posture and added a unique style to their bikes. Yet the extremely high handlebars presented several safety risks. One of the main problems was the difficulty in controlling the motorcycle. With the rider's arms stretched out and raised high, steering accurately became challenging, especially during sharp turns or emergency maneuvers. This lack of precise control increased the likelihood of accidents. Additionally, the high position of the handlebars caused severe fatigue in the rider's arms and shoulders, leading to discomfort and slower reaction times on long rides. Another significant danger involved the impact on the rider's balance. High handlebars altered the motorcycle's center of gravity, making it more unstable, particularly at low speeds or when stopping. This instability could easily result in the bike tipping over. Furthermore, the elevated arm position restricted blood flow, causing numbness and reducing the rider's ability to respond quickly to road conditions. Because of these safety concerns, regulations were eventually introduced in many regions to limit the height of motorcycle handlebars. By the 1980s, most manufacturers had moved away from producing motorcycles with extremely high handlebars, focusing instead on designs that offered better control and comfort. While high handlebars introduced a distinctive style, they posed severe safety risks. So, what about motorcycles with engines in the front wheel? Let's explore how this innovative design fared. Radial engines mounted in the front wheel of motorcycles were an innovative yet hazardous feature from the early 20th century. Inspired by aircraft technology, these engines were designed to fit inside the front wheel, creating a unique and compact power source. This concept appeared in the 1920s with motorcycles like the Magola, which had a 5-cylinder radial engine directly mounted in the front wheel. The main danger of this design lies in its effect on handling and stability. With the engine's weight concentrated in the front wheel, motorcycles became hard to steer and balance, especially at low speeds. This imbalance made the bike prone to tipping over, posing a serious risk to riders. Additionally, the radial engine's complex mechanics, which required constant lubrication and cooling, made it prone to mechanical failures. These issues often led to sudden breakdowns, increasing the likelihood of accidents. Another major problem was the heat generated by the engine. Located in the front wheel, the engine received less airflow than traditional engine placements, reducing cooling efficiency and making overheating a common issue. Overheating not only affected the engine's performance, but also created a fire hazard, further endangering the rider. Due to these safety concerns, radial engines in the front wheel were discontinued by the 1950s. Manufacturers moved to more conventional engine placements, which provided better balance, cooling, and reliability, ensuring a safer and more stable riding experience for motorcyclists. Before electric headlights were developed, motorcycles often used lights powered by acetylene gas. Introduced in the early 1900s, these lights were commonly found on motorcycles like Harley-Davidsons. The acetylene headlights created gas through a chemical reaction between water and calcium carbide. This gas was then directed to the headlamp, where a built-in striker ignited it. While these lights were innovative at the time, they posed serious dangers. The most considerable risk with acetylene headlights was the flame igniting the gas. This open flame and the flammable acetylene gas created a significant fire hazard. Additionally, generating the gas required a cumbersome process that involved carefully handling the chemicals. Any mistake in handling could cause leaks or explosions, making these headlights a dangerous option for riders. By the early 20s, electric headlights gradually replaced acetylene lights. This shift occurred because electric lighting was safer and more reliable. Electric headlights removed the need for an open flame, reducing fire and explosion risks. They also provided a brighter and more consistent light, improving riders' visibility at night. The move to electric headlights greatly improved motorcycle safety. The dangerous acetylene lights were phased out in favor of safer and more efficient electric lights. This change enhanced rider safety and opened the door for further advancements in motorcycle lighting technology, making night riding much safer. Acetylene headlights paved the way for safer lighting, but what about starting motorcycles? Let's explore how the Kickstarter played its role. The Kickstarter was once a common motorcycle feature before electric starters became widely used. Introduced in the early 1900s, it was a lever that riders had to push down with their foot to start the engine. This method was used on many motorcycles, including early models of Harley-Davidsons and Indian motorcycles. While practical at the time, the Kickstarter had several dangers. One major risk was kickback, where the engine would forcefully push the Kickstarter lever back up, often surprising the rider. This could cause serious injuries like sprained ankles, broken bones, or even throwing the rider off the bike. Additionally, using the Kickstarter required significant physical effort, which was challenging for smaller or less experienced riders. In the 1960s, as electric starters became more reliable and affordable, the Kickstarter began to be phased out. Electric starters provided a safer and easier way to start motorcycles, eliminating the risk of kickback and reducing the physical effort required. By the 1980s, most new motorcycles came equipped with electric starters, and the Kickstarter became a thing of the past. Despite its dangers, the Kickstarter holds a nostalgic place in motorcycle history, representing a time when riding required more grit and physical effort. Today, Kickstarters are mostly found on vintage motorcycles and are rarely seen on modern bikes. In the early days of motorcycles, some models were made without seats, a feature that seems unimaginable now. These seatless motorcycles appeared in the late 1800s and early 1900s when motorcycles were motorized bicycles. Riders had to stand on footrest or pedals, which made the ride very uncomfortable and dangerous. Without a seat, riders felt the full impact of every bump and pothole on the road. This lack of cushioning caused severe discomfort and increased the chances of losing control of the motorcycle. Standing while riding also required constant balance and strength, which was exhausting over long distances and could easily lead to accidents. By the 1920s, motorcycle design had changed, and seats became a standard feature. The introduction of seats greatly improved riders' comfort and safety, and with a seat, riders could maintain a stable and comfortable position, giving them better control of their motorcycles. This change also made motorcycles more accessible to a broader range of people, as it reduced the physical demands of riding. The need for safer and more practical motorcycles drove the shift away from seatless designs. As roads improved and motorcycles became faster, the importance of rider comfort and stability became clearer. The addition of seats not only made riding more enjoyable, but also reduced the risk of accidents caused by rider fatigue and loss of balance. With the shift from seatless motorcycles to improved designs for rider comfort, what other daring innovations have shaped motorcycle history? Let's explore the era of propeller-driven bikes and their risks. One of the most unusual and dangerous features in early motorcycle history was the use of propellers. Introduced in the early 1900s, these motorcycles, like the French-built torpedo bicycle, had large propellers mounted at the rear, powered by the engine to move the bike forward. The goal was to reach higher speeds by reducing friction between the wheels and the road. The idea of a propeller-driven motorcycle came with serious risks. The exposed spinning propeller posed a severe danger to both the rider and anyone nearby. Contact with the propeller could cause severe injuries or even fatalities. Moreover, the strong air currents generated by the propeller could make the motorcycle unstable and difficult to control. These motorcycles were short-lived, and most disappeared by the 1920s. The main reason for their removal was the high risk of injury from the exposed propeller, which made them impractical for everyday use. As motorcycle technology progressed, safer and more efficient propulsion methods, such as the chain and belt drives, became standard. Despite their brief appearance in motorcycle history, propeller-driven motorcycles remain an intriguing part of motorcycle design. They highlight the innovative spirit of early engineers willing to try unconventional ideas. Nonetheless, the significant dangers associated with propeller-driven motorcycles led to their eventual discontinuation. Extra seating on motorcycles, often called buddy seats or pillion seats, became popular in the mid-20th century. These seats were designed to hold an additional passenger, making motorcycle rides more social. This idea appeared around the 1950s when individuals and families started to use motorcycles more frequently. The extra seating usually involved a longer cushioned seat that extended over the rear wheel, providing space for a second rider. Although this addition seemed useful, it brought significant safety concerns. The main problem was the lack of proper support and safety features for the passengers. Unlike modern motorcycles with dedicated footrest and secure seating, these early designs often exposed passengers to falls, especially during sudden stops or sharp turns. Adding a passenger also significantly affected the motorcycle's balance and handling. Many of these motorcycles were not built to carry extra weight, which led to instability and a higher risk of accidents. The suspension systems at the time were not designed to manage the added load, causing a rough and unpredictable ride. By the late 1970s and early 80s, motorcycle manufacturers started to move away from these basic extra seating designs. they began introducing more secure and ergonomically designed pillion seats that featured better support, dedicated footrest, and improved safety measures to protect passengers. This change was driven by a growing awareness of road safety and the need to reduce accident rates. Extra seating on motorcycles offered convenience but also posed safety risks. With such challenges, what led to more innovative solutions? Let's explore how skis were experimented with to tackle winter conditions. In the early 20th century, adventurous motorcyclists began experimenting with attaching skis to their bikes. The idea, introduced around the 1920s, aimed to make motorcycles usable in snowy conditions by replacing the front wheel with a ski and sometimes adding a ski to the rear wheel as well. The concept seemed innovative then, offering a way to navigate snowy and icy terrains where traditional motorcycles would struggle. Despite its initial appeal, the reality of motorcycle skis was far from ideal. The skis provided little control and stability, making it extremely difficult to steer the motorcycle. Riders found it challenging to maintain balance, especially at higher speeds or on uneven surfaces. One of the main dangers of motorcycle skis was their lack of traction. Unlike modern snowmobiles, explicitly designed for snow with tracks and specialized skis, these early motorcycle skis did not offer sufficient grip. This often led to skidding and loss of control, resulting in numerous accidents. Additionally, the braking systems of the time were not adapted for use with skis, which further increased the risk of crashes. By the 1940s, the use of motorcycle skis had largely been abandoned. The development of more effective winter transportation methods, such as snowmobiles, and the recognition of the inherent dangers of motorcycle skis led to their decline. Riders and manufacturers realized that the risks far outweighed the benefits, leading to the discontinuation of this feature in favor of safer alternatives. Skinny wheels were common on early motorcycles, especially in the first half of the 20th century. These wheels were narrow, usually less than 3 inches wide, and designed to reduce weight and increase speed. They first appeared in the early 1900s when motorcycles transitioned from bicycles and needed to be light and nimble. Despite their benefits, skinny wheels had significant drawbacks. Their narrow design meant they had a smaller contact area with the road, which reduced traction. This made motorcycles with skinny wheels more likely to slip, particularly on wet or uneven surfaces. The lack of stability also made handling more difficult, increasing the risk of accidents. Riders often struggled to keep control during sharp turns or sudden movements. As motorcycles grew faster and more powerful, the problems with skinny wheels became clear. By the 1950s and 60s, with advances in motorcycle technology, manufacturers began replacing skinny wheels with wider tires. These wider tires offered better grip and stability, making motorcycles safer. The shift to wider tires was driven by the need for improved safety and performance, mainly as motorcycles were used for more than just casual riding. Skinny wheels were discontinued mainly because of their poor performance in harsh conditions. Riders often faced skidding and loss of control, leading to many accidents. Wider tires greatly improved traction and handling, making motorcycles safer and more dependable for everyday use. Did you know motorcycles also saw a shift in their drivetrain systems with a transition from skinny wheels to wider tires? Let's explore how open chain drives became part of this evolution. In the early days of motorcycling, open chain drives were common. This system used an exposed chain to transfer power from the engine to the rear wheel. The open chain drive first appeared in the late 19th century and became widely used in the early 20th century. Unlike modern motorcycles with protective covers, these early models had the chain completely exposed. The open chain drive comprised metal links connecting the engine's output shaft to the rear wheel sprocket. It was a simple and effective way to transmit power, but had notable risks. Without any guard or protection, the chain was vulnerable to debris, dirt, and moisture, which could quickly wear it out or cause it to break. More dangerously, the exposed chain posed a serious risk of injury. Riders could promptly get their clothing, fingers, or other body parts caught in the moving chain, which could lead to severe injuries. As safety concerns grew, enclosed chain drives and other safer alternatives like belt and shaft drives gradually replaced the open chain drive. By the mid-20th century, most manufacturers had moved away from open chain drives. The enclosed chain drive, introduced in the 1970s, provided a protective cover that kept the chain lubricated and free from debris, significantly reducing the risk of accidents and extending the chain's lifespan. In the early days of motorcycling, hand-shifted gears were a common feature. These gears were controlled by a lever mounted on the side of the fuel tank, a system introduced in the early 20th century and widely used until the mid-20th century. To change gears, riders had to take one hand off the handlebars to operate the lever, which significantly compromised their control over the motorcycle. The hand-shifted gear system involved a lever connected to the gearbox, which riders moved to select different gears. Although this might seem simple, it was quite dangerous. Taking one hand off the handlebars reduced control over the motorcycle, especially at high speeds or on rough terrain. This lack of control increased the risk of accidents, as riders could not quickly react to sudden obstacles or changes in road conditions. But the hand-shifted gear system was gradually replaced by foot-operated gear shifts. This newer system allowed riders to keep both hands on the handlebars while changing gears, improving safety and comfort. By the 1950s, most manufacturers had adopted this safer and more intuitive method. The foot-operated gear shift allowed riders to focus more on the road and less on the mechanics of shifting gears.